question in the queue for Commissioner Aresco. So Chuck, who is our first one?
Thanks, Chris. We'll take the first question from Jason Munns from the Memphis Commercial Appeal. Jason, if you just unmute yourself.
Getting the sound.
Morning, Mike. How are you? Can you hear me, Mike?
I don't know that the commissioner can hear. Meg, if you want to ask your question, and then I will pose it to Commissioner Aresco for you.
Okay, just wanted to ask him if he has any comments or would like to comment on the news that came out yesterday about Conference USA and their efforts to join forces with the AAC as this realignment stuff continues to swirl.
So until we get our IFB situation set up, comments on the news yesterday with Conference USA and aligning themselves with the American Athletic Conference. Do you have any remarks on that?
Very limited, comments. I think we've stated a few times that we're not really interested in discussing any kind of merger or conference realignment. At this point, though, I don't want to say much about it because I have not responded to the letter that I did receive late yesterday. I understand that more details of that plan were given to the media, and I don't know how accurate even those accounts were. But we did receive a letter. We'll respond to it very shortly. So that's probably all I should say. As the late great Mike Slive always used to say, I think we'll leave it at that.
Good deal. Chuck, let's go on with another question while we get Commissioner Aresco's IFB situation set up.
Great, thanks. Just for clarity, for members of the media, if you would just use the raise hand feature in Zoom, and then we'll get to as many questions as we can there. And a reminder, we've enabled video recording privileges, I believe, for everyone on the call who should need them. If you need recording privileges, please feel free to just drop a note into the chat. And also, you should be aware that the segments will be available on the conference's YouTube channel shortly thereafter, after each segment. So we should be in good shape there. If you should need anything, feel free to, again, just shoot me a note in text or in the chat, and we'll get to you as we can. We'll move to the next question from Jacob Schwartz with Voice Report, please. Jacob, I'm going to ask you to unmute and ask your question.
Thank you. If he can hear, to the commissioner, you talk about just sort of changes, and that would involve the soon-to-be realignment of this conference. With all the teams that are leading the Cincinnati's, the Houston's, the Florida's, and how excited would you say you are with the fact that now you're officially in a new home in Texas? Dickies Arena is expected to be a capacity, you mentioned, a $540 million arena.
Yeah, we're thrilled to be in Texas, and we're also really excited about being at Dickies Arena. It's just an absolutely perfect venue for us. As you know, we have a number of schools whose fan bases can drive or have short flights, and we tend to have a concentration in this part of the country, although we have a significant presence as well, in the East. But again, it's easy to get to Dallas, obviously one of the best airport situations in the country. Many of our fans can drive. So the arena, though, is absolutely terrific, and anybody who's ever been there just raves about it, and it's impossible not to. And we're also really pleased about being in Dallas, having our conference office here. Now, Dallas is the epicenter of college athletics. There are several other conferences here. The National Football Hall of Fame is here. The College Football Playoff is here. As a matter of fact, the College Football Playoff is in our building upstairs. And people think, the conspiracy theorists think that I planned it that way so I could go up and complain to them myself about the ranking of our teams. But in fact, I didn't even know they were here until we had pretty much decided that this was a good building to be in. But we love Dallas. We think it's a great spot for our conference, and we're very pleased.
Chuck, next question, if you have one in mind.
I think I've lost him. I don't know what happened.
Yeah. So we're going to wait for the Zoom to reconnect. It's funny you joke about the playoff committee being just a couple floors above you. You might have something to say on November 3rd when they eventually come out for the first time. But as we look across the conference, with the way that the basketball landscape is going to be, NIL rules, with an extra year for seniors, we'll see so much more talent this year. What excites you about the basketball season and the landscape of what we're seeing college basketball be like this year?
I think, Chris, we've got some outstanding teams, when you look at Memphis and Wichita and SMU and others. We also have an outstanding roster of coaches. In terms of the landscape, there's a lot of upheaval, and the transfer portal has meant that obviously we've had, roster changes up and down the line. We've had some serious, changes there. I think the fact that we have had a pretty stable coaching environment, right? We have Wes is obviously our new coach in men's basketball. I think that this conference really can make a statement this year. I think we can put several teams into the NCAA tournament. I think they have chances, with Memphis and Houston and Wichita and SMU and others. Cincinnati, I think, will be revitalized. I think you're going to see, some deep runs in the tournament. But on the other hand, the landscape of college basketball has changed dramatically. We're going to have to see how it plays out with this transfer portal. It's affected, really well over 1,000 student athletes, and it's not easy on coaches either. You got to sort of recruit your roster 24/7, all year, and it's difficult.
Well, I think technology might be on our side now. Chuck, our Zoom is up and going. What's the next question for Commissioner Aresco?
All right, we're going to go back to Sean Pastor with Owls Daily, please.
Hi, Mike. Yeah, so I had sort of maybe a two-part question about expansion or potential expansion. First, is there any way you can sort of estimate a timeline for when you might make your next move, the league? And then secondly, I wonder what kind of either consideration or conversation goes on around sort of the geography of the league with respect to Olympic sports and schedules and things like that.
Yeah, with the timeline, we're hoping is within the next, few weeks to a month. We really don't want this to be a prolonged process. We've had a lot of time, to study it, to study what we want to do. Some of the accounts before were really not accurate in terms of how we were operating. And again, schools have approached us, and sometimes you have discussions with schools, and for whatever reason, things don't work out. But we haven't been going out contacting people who haven't expressed an interest in us. Now, as far as Olympic sports, we do have some geographical cohesion in this conference. We potentially could have more. We also are looking in, and everyone is, all the conferences are looking into potentially regionalizing more of our Olympic sports because of the wear and tear, on our student athletes. Football's different in terms of the fewer number of games and the less, travel you have. But with Olympic sports and even in basketball, sometimes that can be an issue, although less so. But with Olympic sports and a lot of our teams, and you have to remember, too, there are a limited number of team sports in Olympic sports. And so consequently, with respect to the other sports, you have a meet or a championship each year, and you don't have a lot of, you can regionalize. For example, Temple can in track and field can enter into a lot of meets in the New England and New York and metropolitan mid-Atlantic areas. And so consequently, there is regionalization going on even now in some of the sports. But we expect that, we'll try to, geography does matter. It probably doesn't matter as much as it once did. I don't think there's much question that some of the conferences are far more far-flung than they were for a lot of reasons. Remember, you're trying to create a dynamic conference that competes at the highest level, that has schools that culturally are very similar and that share the same values and share the same vision. And consequently, that means that you're going to have a little more geographical diversity. But if you look at our conference now, there's a relative concentration, from the Mississippi, slightly westward and mostly eastward, and we'll see where it goes. I can't really comment on, expansion per se at this point. I don't want to get into any specifics. I have said that we plan to expand because obviously we don't want to stay at the numbers we're at now. But that's pretty much all I can say about it. But thank you for the question.
We'll go next to Mason Vaught of KGSO Radio in Wichita, please.
Yeah, Commissioner, early on in the process, it seemed like the narrative for the American and conference realignment was going to be being very offensive in the situation. Now it seems like it's more of a defensive approach with 3 schools planning to leave for the Big 12. How do you guys kind of move forward from here, and how did it change from being to where you guys might be the poacher and now you're the poached looking to make up for the loss of 3 schools?
Well, Jason, first of all, I hate to use that word poached, period. It's not really what's going on. Schools express interest in joining particular conferences. Conferences are voluntary organizations. We have to remember that. We have to remember that if you pay your exit fee and you stay a particular amount of time, and that's pretty much true of every conference, you can leave. You can determine your fate and how you want to go about things. And so you have to remember that. You also have to remember that we can't take this personally. It's the nature of our business. Schools want to improve themselves. Conferences have changed dramatically. Realignment's been going on for a long time. I don't particularly like it. I don't think a lot of people like it. It's tough on everyone. I wouldn't say that our position is defensive at all. I think, we've obviously got some schools that are leaving. They have their reasons for leaving. We've had an outstanding relationship with those schools. We wish them well. They've done a great job for us, and we've done a great job for them. I think what's sometimes overlooked is what this conference has done for schools, what the American Athletic Conference has done in elevating programs that may not have been at the level they're at now, and by really, I think, intelligent scheduling with the great support of ESPN, and I can't stress that enough, how much ESPN has supported us and what their exposure and their promotion has meant for this conference. So these schools have benefited enormously, and now a few of them are looking for another opportunity. That's fine. We would like to have had them stay. But in terms of the conference, our goals and vision have not changed. And I think once we reconstitute, I think we're going to continue. In fact, I have no doubt we're going to continue our approach and try to become a P6 conference, an Autonomy 6 conference. I think in view of what's happened around college athletics, in view of what's happened in the Big 12, I think we have a claim, to make as we continue to compete at the highest level. And so consequently, I think, and the last thing I'll say is it's not a question of defensive, offensive. It's a question of you have to accept the realities. You have to do what's in the interest of your conference. You have to protect and defend and enhance your conference, your brand, the profiles of your schools. You have a real responsibility to them, and you do what you have to do. And again, as I said earlier, you don't take it personally. We have good relationships with all the commissioners and a lot of the athletic directors who are involved in these processes, and we understand their motivations. And, we went through a tough period 5 or 6 years ago when the Big 12 did that. It was very unfortunate how public it was, and a lot of our schools, did express an interest. And we handled that, and we handled it well, and we kept really good cohesion in this conference. And this conference will continue to be cohesive. We've got a great group of schools, and we're going to be fine going forward.
We'll go back to Jason Munz from the Memphis Commercial Appeal. Jason, just unmute yourself and feel free to ask your follow-up, please.
Hey, Mike, just wanted to maybe switch gears a little bit and talk and ask you about Memphis's IARP infractions case. It's unclear at this stage, when it's going to be resolved, but I think it's on the table that a decision could come down during the season. How fair do you think that is when? And it's not just Memphis, but it doesn't, any school that has a potential, NCAA infractions decision sort of looming over its head and potentially coming down during the season.
Yeah, I don't know yet, Jason. And again, I probably should not comment because, again, the process is ongoing. It's very sensitive. We hope, obviously we support Memphis, and we hope the resolution is a fair resolution. Again, I don't know what the timeline is, and I can't really speak to the fairness of the timeline at this point. I think it's better, just not to comment on that. Thanks.
All right, we'll take our final question for the Commissioner from Christopher Heidel from Herb FM Radio.
Hello, Commissioner. Thank you so much for taking my question this morning. I hope everything's okay down there in Dallas.
Thank you. It is. It might be raining. I don't know. Other than that, I think everything's fine.
I'm here in Baltimore. It's cloudy as anything outside. But anyway, last year Houston made it to the Final Four for basketball. What does that feel for you as a commissioner, knowing that with all the good teams you have in this league, that Houston made it all the way to the Final Four in Indianapolis?
Well, first of all, we were thrilled. That program has, been really good for a while. When you really think about it, they had the heartbreaking loss to Michigan several years ago, and that Michigan team went to the championship game. So Houston could have advanced very far. And then, in the year before, the pandemic, they took Kentucky right to the wire, and I thought they were going to win that game. They led with 48 seconds left. I think they had a 3-point lead, and ultimately lost in the last seconds to a good Kentucky team. So they've been on the cusp. And Kelvin, again, as I said earlier, I cannot, really laud Kelvin enough for the job he's done there. And obviously, Tillman Fertitta at Houston has contributed greatly to the facilities, and the Fertitta Center is an absolutely wonderful venue. We're going to miss them down the road in our conference, but we've been thrilled to have them, and we're thrilled to have them for potentially another few years. We don't know yet what the timeline on that is, but I just want to again thank Kelvin too for all he's done to promote the conference. He's been really steadfast in his support for us and for me personally as commissioner, and I can't tell you how pleased I was for them. And we never root in conference play. We always root obviously for the non-conference the games, but we're really thrilled to see what he's done there. And again, this last year there were some terrific games between Houston and Memphis and Wichita, and they really had some terrific games, especially in the tournament. So we'll hope that we can provide our network partners again with those kinds of games. But it was gratifying also, last thing I'll say on this is it was gratifying to have a team in the Final Four. I think this league's been a good league. I think sometimes it doesn't get the attention or the respect it deserves. We have had years when we've had 4 teams in the tournament. We've been a multiple bid league every year. And we've had some good teams, and we've come really close. UCF almost beat Duke a few years ago. That was a heartbreaking loss. They really thought they would win that game as well. So we've had a lot of situations where we could have advanced a little further in the tournament. You take all those losses, harder than you do sometimes enjoy the wins. And we've had a lot of them in the tournament. So we've been a really good team. We've had a good league. We've had good teams, and to have another Final Four team in Houston this year was, as I said, extremely gratifying.
Well, Mike O'Donnell already predicted it. He thinks 4 teams get in the tournament this year. So we'll see. Commissioner Aresco, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you, Chris. I hope Mike's right, and maybe even more,
Yeah.
Thank you, Chris. It's a pleasure to have you, and enjoy the day, and we'll look forward to it.
I appreciate it. And the Houston talk was a perfect segue because that starts our day with our team question and answer portion. We're going to talk to University of Houston players and coaches, the men coming off a trip to the